Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. It's Daniel here again. And hey, if you've ever wanted to see scruffy Harrison Ford go on a Yukon nature adventure with a big CGI dog, then you're in luck. Call of the Wild, new movie just hit theaters. It's here to scratch that itch, so let's talk about it. So, Call of the Wild, this is a movie that I don't think maybe it was not on a whole lot of people's radars unless you're a big kind of dog person. I'm not, but I am a big Harrison Ford person. So, seeing him in all his scruffy, bearded, kind of grumpy glory intrigued me. It's a movie that, the story itself has been told, A Call of the Wild has been told before. This type of story has been told, 1,000 times. You kind of know what you're gonna get going into this, even if you're not familiar with the source material of a guy and his dog as pet that kind of both through their relationship to each other kind of find meaning and their place in the world. And again, it's a story that's been told a lot of times, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a reason why I think some of these stories get told again and again. It's because there's powerful truths to kind of be come out of a story like that. For me, that's sort of what this movie was. This movie, it's not a fantastic. It didn't blow me away. It's not a movie that I think a lot of people are going to kind of revisit again and again over the years. It's not one of those movies, but it's definitely not a dud. It's not a failure. It's just sort of a good movie. You watch it, you leave the theater, think about it for a bit, kind of move on. Maybe don't think about it again. But I think overall, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed what it was trying to go for. In some ways it kind of broke the mold of this type of story. In other ways, it leaned into exactly what you'd expect. So there's not a whole lot of surprises necessarily, but I thought the way that the movie kind of retold this familiar story was just done really well. And probably one of the things for us to get out of the way at the start is there, a lot of the talk about the movie from the trailers and stuff, and people talking about it is with the dog. It's a CGI dog, and it's weird. It's kind of, in some ways, it's ironic. This is a movie that, the overarching message of it is to, kind of getting back to our roots and nature, kind of finding the peace in the outdoors and kind of the organicness of Earth. So that's sort of what the message of the story is. But to tell that story, it's being told, it's leaning into very, overly using technology and CGI and things that aren't natural and organic and real animals. So it's kind of weird. And I'd say maybe the first third of this movie, as I was in the theater, I was just thinking, this is not going to work. I'm not buying this dog. I think technology's come a long way with, some movies like The Lion King or Jungle Book, which look very lifelike. But for those movies, it's all computer animated animals interacting. So you don't really have that contrast of the real world, real people interacting with a CGI animal. And when you have that, you can really tell this is, it's not convincing. This is not a real animal. He's not there. Harrison Ford's probably petting some green screen, stand-in. And probably the first third of this movie, it threw me off. It's kind of cartoonish. But I think once you kind of settle into that and into the movie and kind of just get used to what the dog, Buck is the name of the dog in the movie, I found, kind of thinking back afterwards, that I stopped noticing it. I stopped caring as much about the fact that this wasn't real, and just sort of gave myself to what the story was trying to tell. And again, Harrison Ford's the other kind of big name actor in this. He's not in it as much as you might think from the marketing. He's really only in the second half of this movie, maybe even the last third of this movie. He kind of appears earlier, but as far as like a central figure, he's not front and center as much as I expected. There's some other characters that come and go, but he's a pro. He's been doing, he's obviously a capable actor. And he kind of, I would say he chews up the scenery, but he's not hamming it up. He actually gives a real kind of delicate, believable performance as a guy that has just had some hardship in his life, and he's kind of isolating himself from the world, trying to just find peace somewhere. And I think his performance really sells that, and you do buy into it. And that's kind of what one of the things that I found thinking about this movie that I really appreciated was that in some ways it's kind of a mellow movie, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's not. There's not huge action, exciting set pieces and scenes, and the music kicking in, this big adventure. It's really not a movie like that. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a slow moving story. It's pretty even keel throughout. There is some actiony kind of scenes in their adventure, but it's never kind of over the top. Kind of real Hollywoodized. It's kind of the storytellers pull back a lot and just kind of tell it in a more calm way, and you kind of just go on this journey with this, with Buck the dog, and then eventually as he kind of connects with the Harrison Ford character, and they're going off into the wilderness, and the music's kind of soothing, the scenery's soothing. There's kind of long periods where it's just the dog and his owner is sort of reminiscing, contemplating their life. And I think some people might find that kind of boring. I was thinking that, I assume going in that this is kind of a movie aimed towards kids. It's a kind of a cute dog story, but it's really not. And it's not inappropriate for kids. There's not swearing. There's a little bit of violence, but there's nothing content-wise, but just kind of thematically, it's dealing with some kind of weighty stuff of just sort of trying to find peace and the hardships of life and kind of where hope comes from in the midst of that. And it takes the time to kind of resist some of the big set pieces in action and just sort of, let you spend some time out in nature with these characters wrestling with this. And I think for some people that might be a negative going into this, especially if you maybe bring some kids that kind of lose interest while you're watching it. But for me, I really enjoyed that it was dealing with some of those sort of themes and some of that kind of just a little more subdued and kind of the bombastic stuff that you might expect in a movie like this. And I think as far as kind of like a theme, there's several ways to look at it. I think the overarching thing, because again, this movie, in some ways, it kind of bucks the 3-act traditional storytelling. It more just sort of follows this journey of this dog, and there's characters that are in the first act, the kind of main characters that, as the dog moves on with his life, those characters kind of move out of the story. You don't see them again. So it's kind of moves more chronologically than kind of really the whole story and plot tying together. But sort of the theme kind of throughout this whole movie is just sort of a search for peace. That it comes the most emphasized with the Harrison Ford character, that he's out in the Yukon. He's not interested in gold. He's dealing with the loss of one of his children, and the results of that, and losing his marriage. And he's just out in the wilderness, just looking for peace anywhere. And then you have Buck, the dog, that's kind of been through some hardships, trying to find where he belongs in this world. And it's kind of this search in their own ways. They're this journey, this adventure they go on. They're trying to find peace. And it's, again, as Christians, there's several ways to look at this. In some ways, you could say that this movie is, the answer to that question is just to get out into the unknown, to go into the wild, get in tune with nature, and almost in like a pagan kind of back to our roots kind of way. The answer to the search for peace in this movie is not, in Jesus or in God. But I don't know. I think that's reading too much into it. I think, for me, I just took it as sort of because there is sort of an optimism throughout this movie that despite some of the hardships that the dog faces, and then some of the more weighty aspects that the Harrison Ford character faces, there's kind of this kind of, optimism just beneath the surface that, that pushes them forward on this quest to sort of finally kind of find peace in this world. And I thought if you kind of take it at that level and don't kind of overthink maybe some of the implications or what it's trying to talk about, I think it's just a powerful reminder of it is sort of a feel-good, optimistic story. And it kind of, it sort of emphasizes that there is good, there is sort of joy and fulfillment, even amidst the hardships and the kind of the gritty reality of life. And I think that's a story, kind of a message that, as Christians or just as anyone, is this worth revisiting and kind of experiencing. So I think in the end, this movie, like I said earlier, this is not a movie that I think people are going to be rewatching again and again, and it's any kind of classic or going to make all that big of a ripple in pop culture and cinema. But I think this is a good movie. It's well told, it's well filmed, it's interesting. It's not overly serious trying to preach. But I think there's some kind of well-earned kind of weighty themes and stuff to sink your teeth into. It's not just pure entertainment, even if it is entertaining. So again, I think this is maybe, I think it might be aim a little older than some of the younger kids. Don't go in expecting this a bunch of gags and stuff with this dog. It is a little more serious than that. But I think for older children and then just as adults or dog lovers or Harrison Ford lovers, there's enough to enjoy in this movie to check it out. And I think even to see it in theaters, there's some of the scenery and stuff of just the Yukon is beautiful. And I think just being able to kind of immerse yourself in that world in the theater is definitely worth the price of a ticket. But hey, if you see this movie, I'd love to hear what you think. Maybe if you're familiar with the source material, maybe there's some changes. I'm not, so I don't know how faithful it is. But I just enjoyed it as a movie. So I'd love to hear what you thought. Were you bored by this movie? Did you appreciate it? Did you enjoy seeing a bearded, scruffy Harrison Ford as much as I did? Let me know. And again, if you haven't done so, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. Keep up with all our video contents. I just want to thank you guys for watching. Hope you'll continue to collide with your world for Christ.